some say that when God said, "Come, let us make man in our image and in our likeness," the angels, by the eye of the Spirit, saw the right hand of God spread out over the whole world, and there were in parts of all the creatures, both spiritual and corporeal. And God took from these parts and fashioned Adam with his holy hands, and breathed into him the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed here on Truth Frequency Radio. I'm honored to have all of you join us in fellowship this evening. We are continuing. I have as guest with me Rob Skiba, and we are continuing our journey into the creation narrative and the Genesis timeline. And today we'll be speaking about the sixth day and the creation of man. Rob, are you there, brother?
I am. Thanks for having me on, and I'm excited to dive in again.
As am I. This has been a really incredible journey, and I think that many people are being blessed by the time that we are taking to explore this in greater depth and to look into the context of the Hebrew and also the other books, the extra biblical narratives, which have parallel accounts of the various actions and the creations of these particular days. And so a lot of feedback from individuals that are enjoying the series.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of good feedback too, looking at the comments both on Facebook as well as YouTube, and kind of following a little bit as much as I can in the chat room. Got a pretty active chat room right now on YouTube. So, it's exciting. This was a lot of people enjoyed the Quest for Truth that Doug Hamp and I did, because a lot like this one, we didn't agree on everything. But we came together and we were looking at scripture line by line and just sharing, what it meant to me, what it meant to him, in this case, what it means to you. And hopefully everybody grows from the experience. We're not telling anybody else what to believe. We're just simply looking at the text and drawing from our own personal experiences and research and sharing what we believe. And so, I think this is what they call it, the Hebrews called a midrash,
Mm-hmm.
And Doug used to say, if you've ever, and also Dr. Russ Hauk was fond of saying the same thing. He's a Messianic Jewish guy. He said, if you ever go into a house of Beit Midrash, Beit being house, Midrash is what we're doing, discussing. It's a civilized, but certainly not a quiet environment. People he says, it's very loud. It's very passionate. People get in each other's faces, but then afterwards it's all good. Shalom, shalom, hug each other. Mm-hmm. Go out to dinner or whatever. And so, that's kind of the way I look at it is, it's okay to be passionate about the things you believe and, talk these things out. So I really, really enjoy this format.
Yeah, as do I. And, again, with regard to all that we've learned, even with the opening to biblical cosmology over the last few years, we realize just how much it is that we can learn in new revelation. And so doing these kind of studies, it's benefiting everybody, I believe. And especially if we can come together in terms where we honor and respect each other in conversation and just share fellowship. And of course, everybody has differences of opinions. Nobody sees it the exact same way mm-hmm. as anybody else, and so, and none of us has all of the answers. And so, excited to continue. We're going into the account of the creation of what I believe to be both the preadamites and modern humanity. But that's something we'll explore.
Yeah. All right. You want me to just go and read day 6?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I'm on BibleGateway.com reading from the King James Bible. We left off with day 5 last week. I think we covered that pretty good. I can't think of anything else.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay, so let's dive in, beginning in verse 24. Genesis 1:24. And God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping thing and beasts of the earth after his kind. And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth after his kind, and cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. And God blessed them, and God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. And God said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life, I have given every green herb for meat, and it was so. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day. Well, there's certainly a lot to get us in trouble here.
Yeah, of course, as always. And before we go into the dialogue, I'll read the Targum version of the same verses. It says, and the Lord said, let the soil of the earth bring forth the living creatures according to his kind, the kind that is clean and the kind that is unclean, cattle and creeping thing and the creature of the earth according to his kind. And it was so. And the Lord made the beast of the earth after his kind, the clean and the unclean, and the cattle after their kind, and every reptile of the earth after its kind, the clean and the unclean. And the Lord saw that it was good. And the Lord said to the angels who ministered before him, who had been created in the second day of the creation of the world, let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl which are in the atmosphere of heaven, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every reptile creeping upon the earth. And the Lord created man in his likeness. From the Jerusalem Targum. And the word of the Lord created man in his likeness. In the likeness of the presence of the Lord he created him. The male and his yokefellow he created them. In the image of the Lord he created him, with 248 members, with 365 nerves, and overlaid them with skin, and filled it with flesh and blood. Male and female in their bodies he created them. And he blessed them, and the Lord said to them, increase and multiply, and fill the earth with sons and daughters, and prevail over it in its possessions, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the heavens, and over every creeping animal that creepeth upon the earth. And the Lord said, behold, I have given you every herb whose seed seedeth upon the face of all the earth, and every unfruitful tree for the need of building and for burning, and the tree in which its fruit seeding after its kind. To you it shall be for food. But to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the heavens, and to every reptile upon the earth, in which is the living soul, I have given all green herbs. And it was so. And the Lord beheld everything he had made, and it was very good. And it was evening, and it was morning, the sixth day. The first thing that I wanted to comment on, and this is something that had come up in a previous show, but do you believe that the preadamites and also humanity up to the time of Noah, that they were vegetarian and did not eat flesh until the covenant with Noah that gave him that ability so long as the blood was not within it. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, just reading Genesis 1, it seems to me that we were originally designed to be vegetarians. And, for me personally, I have recently started to head in that direction, like over the last year or so. Well, actually, I take it back. It's been since 2016. When Rick Hummer and I were doing some of the, maybe it was 16 or 17. It might have been 17 anyway. When we were doing the balloon chasing, when we were out there doing the high altitude balloon launches, it was right next to a chicken farm. And it's just horrific, man. Like what has happened in the meat industry. I'm not against eating meat per se. I'm against the meat farms and the horrific treatments of these animals.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just if you can even call it living, they're living in horrible conditions, often forced to be cannibals the way they're fed. They're tortured their entire life. They're pumped full of hormones and all kind of God knows what else. And then they're brutally massacred, often in front of each other. And all of that stress and toxin and horror, we end up eating that.
Right.
And, just from just a humane point of view, I'm like, I can't support that. Now, I went to John Pounder's place, and he's raising some of his own animals and stuff like that. And, he's raising his animals humanely, and, butchered the lamb humanely. I didn't have any problem eating that. So, for me, and I started looking, there's a documentary that came out recently called Game Changers that was produced by, I think it was James Cameron, Arnold Schwarzenegger, a whole bunch of people. And it's talking about athletes that are plant-based, and, like entire teams, like NFL teams that are just, that have decided to be 100% plant-based, and they're experiencing enormous gains and finding themselves to be a lot more athletic than they had been when they were eating meat. And then you have the testimony of Daniel and his boys when they refused to eat the meat and stuff that was sacrificed to idols and whatnot. And they were just on fruits and vegetables, and they were healthier and stronger than the King's mighty men. So for me, I'm starting to make the shift in that direction personally, for health reasons, as well as just I can't deal with what's going on out there. And unless I know for certain that these animals were treated well and not pumped full of chemicals and, all that kind of stuff, I just don't want anything to do with it. But more than that, biologically speaking, I posted something on my Facebook recently. It had pictures of different creatures, and their teeth was the first thing you see, is the pictures of their teeth. Now, granted, you have like panda bears and other things that are herbivores that they're not meat eaters, but they have big, sharp teeth. So, the argument is, well, see, that doesn't prove you're a carnivore just because your teeth, are or are not, big, sharp teeth like a lion or whatnot. I get the argument, but the meme had a whole lot of other things listed on it, talking about like meat eaters that are, carnivorous animals have acidic saliva. They have much shorter intestines. There's a whole long list of things that they are designed very different from us. We have alkaline, we're supposed to have alkaline saliva, and process food differently. Our internal organs are different, and frankly, we have to cook meat. Like, when you can't just grab an animal and just start chomping on it. You can grab anything off a tree, assuming it's not been sprayed with chemicals, and start eating it. So like, to eat meat, it requires, in some cases, significant preparation. And likewise, animals, a lot of animals can't eat vegetables just right. They don't have the enzymes to process vegetables properly, anymore. So, I posted something on Facebook, what we are allowed to eat and what we were designed to eat appear to me to be two different things. And that stirred up a huge firestorm, people going psycho. And I'm calling them meatheads now because that's what they are. The people who are like, we got to eat meat, how dare you? I'm like, first of all, I didn't tell anybody what to do. I'm not telling anybody what else to. I'm just saying, these are my choices. This is what I'm thinking, for myself. But to answer your question, that's a long answer, but to answer your question, looking at the text here, it does appear to me that everything was designed originally to eat plants. And if you think about, the myth is you got to eat meat to be strong.
Right.
And there's one of the,
Protein.
yeah, Chris and Liz Bailey would contest that, talking about what types of protein your body actually does assimilate. And in that documentary, I forget the guy's name, but he's like one of the world's strongest men kind of guys. You ever see guys like take big tractor trailer, like huge tires, like they're the size of you and I,
Yeah.
and they're flipping the tires? Well, this guy's like flipping the truck. Okay.
Oh, wow.
This guy says, like, I forget the tires. Like, he's flipping the truck, And he made a comment in the trailer for the documentary. They said, how did you become strong as an ox without eating meat? And he goes, you ever see an ox eat meat? I'm like, oh, that's a genius answer, But in the book of Job, God's, bragging on his creation. And he says, behold now Behemoth. And the description given for Behemoth, I believe, is a sauropod dinosaur. I mean, it's a perfect description of like an apatosaurus or, the long neck, long tail dinosaurs. And
with a tail the size of a
cedar tree, thank English translators, some of them trying to help us out, translating it as elephant or hippo. I'm like, you ever see the tail of a hippo?
Right.
Who's like a cedar tree, right? But you have these massive creatures that the God is, I believe, he's bragging on this. He's like, look at that. That's the chief of my ways. And it was a plant eater, so then the question becomes, okay, why were we allowed to eat meat after the flood? And I simply say, you ever see what a flood does to the land? The whole earth was completely devastated.
Right.
And it's going to take, and they probably depleted their food being on the ark for a year, and so when they got off the ark, food was probably, the old sense of food was probably quite scarce. And he said, okay, there's provision now. You can also eat meat. That's my feeling on it, because I mean, even like an apple tree takes like 7 years to grow and start producing fruit. Other plants produce a lot quicker, but I could see the justification for making that provision after the flood simply as a result of what flood does to the land.
Yeah, I could totally see that. That it would take the land time to even dry out and to have food crops come forth to sustain even all the animals and replenishing the land. I also think it has something to do with the way that the giants, being cannibals, and that they started to eat all of the creatures, even humanity, and to cannibalize humanity, to drink the blood, to eat the flesh. And that was almost like God saying, okay, well, I'll allow y'all to eat meat, but you're certainly not going to do it in the manner that the giants were and how they were, as far as, just eating raw, cannibalizing humanity and drinking the blood. That, he was saying that you'd have to cook it, and certainly not to do it in the way that the giants and the cannibals in that previous generation that they were involved in consuming and partaking of meat. But I do agree with you that, according to scripture and the way that it looks at it, and even the commentaries, that they were designed initially to eat from the crops, and that the plants and vegetables, that was their food. And I also think that the way that culture is now, especially, I saw a documentary called What the Health, and it was about the overconsumption of meat in our culture and society, and how that does cause acidity. It causes your pH balance to turn from alkaline to acidic, and that once you hold such an acidic pH balance, your body starts to consume itself, and it will lead to what is the perfect environment for the propagation of cancer, and the for clusters, cancers and tumors and things of that nature to grow in the body in all different places. And that if you don't, which most people don't have really good immune systems because of the depletion of the food and the vitamin and the nutrients and the things that used to be provided, and because most people are over consuming meat and not eating vegetables or fruits or anything raw directly from the earth, and even the way that crops are grown in these industrial farms, that the nutrients that they used to get from the soil, that it's a lot of the soil has been depleted of all of that, and that, you know, like the Jubilee, they allow the land to grow fallow and to just grow wild and to not, harvest it, and crop rotation, all of those kind of things make an impact on the kind of food that can be grown in certain places and through the soil. And then the use of pesticides, Roundup, and things of that nature that also really affects the crops and genetically modified foods. I mean, it's on and on. And now everybody, with the use of microwaves, that totally kills, food as well. And so there's no benefit. All the fast food and everything being fried. It's a wonder, that people are able to survive and on just the kind of food that most of the modern world eats in this day and age.
Oh, boy, that is the truth. I mean, you just go to like a Walmart or even supermarkets and look down the aisles. Most of the stuff that's on the shelves is not food.
Right.
It's just heavily processed crap. Largely sugar. It's just not food, and it is amazing that any of us are alive.
Right.
I mean, that's
absolutely.
a testament to the machine that is our body that God created. Just and animals too, because I mean, you look into like even like pet food is just as jacked up
Right.
as the, if not worse, as human food. And big surprise, right? We're seeing our animals dealing with the same types of cancers and crap that
Exactly.
we're having to deal with. So yeah, I think things, there's an ideal, which we see here in Genesis 1, and then there's the compromise, which is what I see, probably logically needed after the flood. I don't think it's a sin to eat meat. In fact, when you get to like Leviticus, you start looking at especially the Levitical priesthood requirements and the sacrifices and stuff like they're actually required to eat it. In fact, in Passover, eating the lamb and things of that nature. So, certainly it's not a sin. People are trying to make the case that, Jesus was a vegan. I'm like, yeah, I don't see that. I believe he ate a Passover meal also.
Yeah.
Of the few times that we have references of him consuming anything, I certainly do see him eating meat. So
Fish.
Yeah, fish, certainly. So, but again, we are allowed to, and in some cases commanded to, when it comes to the various feasts and things like that. One of the questions that came up in the chat room was then why do we have a definition of clean and unclean here in the beginning, and why did Noah take, so many clean and so many unclean on the ark if it didn't have to do with, dietary stuff? And I was like, well, clean and unclean don't just deal with food. It also deals with sacrifice.
Yeah, absolutely.
What Yahuwah himself considers to be clean or appropriate for sacrifice, just so happens to also be what he considers to be clean or unclean in terms of food.
Yes.
So, at this point, I don't have anything, biblically speaking, I don't have anything to justify eating meat, at least that I could see, prior to the flood. I see it after the flood. So, any reference, therefore, in my mind, to clean or unclean prior to the flood seems to have to do more with what he considers appropriate for sacrifice as opposed to consumption.
I would also say, with regard to clean and unclean animals, that God makes a distinction within the word. He tells us those animals that are scavengers and that eat the refuse of the land and in the seas, that are bottom feeders, fish without scales like catfish, and then the lobster and crab and shrimp and things of that nature that really feed on the refuse, and then animals that are carrion eaters like vultures, birds of prey, things of that nature, that, in my opinion, we're recommended and told not to consume those kind of animals because of, the fact that they are cleaning up the diseased carcasses and eating of roadkill. We're told to not consume animals that have been killed by other wild animals, or that you just roadkill, like you find on the you don't know how it was killed or anything of that nature. And the reason being is because he's trying to keep us from getting sick. Yeah, if we're gonna eat meat, at least eat that which is clean and that is healthy. And oh gosh, it already. All right, we'll be right back, and then I'll get you to comment on that.